What's up, Taiwan? Good morning. I'm Erika Liu with 10 minutes of news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's government-run labor pension fund lost $14.8 billion in the first half of the year. Almost half of that was in June alone.
这个市场是因为跌得很凶啦，所以那金融环境因为上半年确实在表现上不是很好。
The Labor Ministry says a resurgence of COVID and Russia's invasion of Ukraine disrupted supply chains and spurred inflation, hitting global stocks. The ministry says uncertainties remain for the rest of the year, but that a gradual recovery in the coming months is possible. The highest-level U.S. official to visit Taiwan in a quarter-century wrapped up her one-day trip on Wednesday. But how will the stopover by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi impact Taiwan's domestic politics? To find out, TaiwanPlus reporter Ryan Hill-Kilpatrick spoke with Lev Nachman, a political scientist at Taiwan's National Zhengzhi University.
In the past, these big spikes in tensions across the Taiwan Strait have been held to have a big impact on Taiwanese politics. And of course, we have big midterm elections coming up in Taiwan soon. What do you think the fallout will be?
So common wisdom often says that midterm elections are more about, bread and butter politics, local issues. But I would predict that these midterms, we're actually going to see a lot more rhetoric around cross-strait relations and around perceptions of China and parties really leaning into their kind of party's approach to China and the U.S. This time around, especially just the timing of all of these events with the midterm happening in November. I think it's going to be very much on Taiwanese voters' minds when it comes to voting for their local officials.
How has the political opposition in Taiwan been reacting to this visit? And what do you think their input will be going forward?
The KMT is in a really tricky position because of this visit. Eric Chu has been really trying to re-emphasize the KMT's connection to the United States, that it has a good relationship with America. We saw that from his recent visit to Washington, D.C. But domestically, the KMT has been rather quiet and cool on Pelosi's visit. And, we've seen some of the more extreme deep blue voices coming out in strong opposition. There were people protesting outside of Nancy Pelosi's hotel yesterday. And even though these are fringe parts of kind of the pan blue vote, it does speak to kind of how that deep blue base of support that the KMT does need to mobilize for elections might not look favorably upon these visits, which means that Eric Chu is going to have to be very careful about how he reflects on Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in a way that doesn't isolate voters who are in favor of this, but also does not isolate voters that oppose it.
We've been seeing more and more of these high-level visits to Taiwan by foreign politicians in the past year. But what do you think is the value gained from this particular historic visit for both Taipei and Washington?
So in the last year plus, even the last 4 or 5 years, U.S.-Taiwan relations have really hit an all-time high. Relations are really good and really strong. Rock solid is the phrase that we often hear. So for this visit, it most certainly is a strong victory for U.S.-Taiwan relations and a win for Taiwan, very much symbolically. But, in terms of added value, it really gets to a point where we see a bit of a ceiling effect, where U.S.-Taiwan relations in this context can only get so much better. And this trip is certainly good for Taiwan. But from a U.S. perspective, this most certainly is going to blow back when it comes to U.S.-China relations. There's certainly going to be value lost for the U.S.-Chinese relationship, especially in a moment where relations are particularly bad. And there are people in Washington trying to find ways to make that relationship more productive. And even though this trip by Nancy Pelosi is a good, strong measure of the U.S.'s commitment to Taiwan, it is going to have negative ramifications for the U.S.-China relationship going forward at this very pivotal moment.
Display monitors at convenience stores and a train station in Taiwan were hacked on Wednesday to show messages opposing the visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Customers at 7-Eleven stores in a number of cities were surprised to see screens showing the words "Warmonger Pelosi, get out of Taiwan." Meanwhile, a sign at a train station in the southern city of Kaohsiung was hacked to show a message that referred to Pelosi as an old witch. The message was written in the simplified Chinese characters used in mainland China. Police are looking into the disruptions, which are suspected to be the work of Chinese hackers. Cambodia is a popular tourist destination, but for some Taiwanese, it's also a place where they have suffered threats and abuse after being lured there with promises of high-paying jobs. Taiwan police say more than 100 Taiwanese have fallen for online employment scams in Cambodia so far this year, with some forced to work for criminal groups. Some of the victims have now spoken about their experiences, as Louise Watt reports.
A person screams as they are beaten and tortured. One of a growing number of Taiwanese victims lured to Cambodia with promises of high-paying jobs. Another victim, whose name has been changed to protect his identity, was recently rescued and brought back to Taiwan. He says he feared for his life.
那时候就是会睡到被吓到啊，很怕自己可能哪里做不好，然后就突然从后面有电击棒电下去这样。看到一些当地的柬埔寨，然后把人压在地上啊，割器官，然后是直接枪毙啊，又会开始自己很怕回到明天太阳。
Chiang says he fell prey to a scam organisation that had posted a job listing on Facebook. He says he wasn't paid and was sometimes beaten. Another victim was referred to a job in Cambodia by a friend and then found herself being forced to scam others.
那时候疫情影响有一点不稳定，然后所以才想说那就跟朋友一起，然后去尝试看看。他们就直接跟我们讲说，如果你现在要走，或者是你进来已经答应进来，然后之后离开，你就是要付赔付。
Tian Tian and her boyfriend say they were forced to work for a fraud ring and just escaped being sold to another criminal group. Taiwan's Criminal Investigation Bureau has received 141 similar reports so far this year and believes there may be thousands of other cases not reported.
民众应先查明该公司是否合法设立，并审慎评估工作内容，以避免掉入诈骗的陷阱。
Taiwan's Labour Ministry says it will provide a list of known scammers to job placement agencies. But Facebook and other social networks are unregulated, and job seekers are being warned to stay vigilant. Maggie May and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
The National Taiwan Museum of Fine Arts has announced the theme for a biennial exhibition focused on the country's contemporary art. This year, the theme Love and Death of Sentient Beings will explore the worldly and the sacred and the relationship between human and non-human. The works of more than 30 local artists will be displayed at the event in November. The Taiwan Biennial started in 2008. Every 2 years, the museum invites contemporary artists to create works in various media to illustrate contemporary Taiwan.
关心我们的土地，关心我们自己的历史，在现在到底是什么意义？科技如何影响到我们的感情生活？那这个连结呢，就包括说现世存在的这些各个族群的连结，以及说我们跟生态、跟各个其他物种的一个连结。
Formosa means beautiful in Portuguese. It's also another name for Taiwan. Before we go, we want to give you a sneak peek into a new series exploring the natural beauty of the country. This is the song of the Taiwan Swinho pheasant. It's part of TaiwanPlus's new program, Formosa Forevermore, showcasing the indigenous culture, natural wildlife, and beautiful vistas of Taiwan.
要介绍台湾，要理解台湾。当然，我们人文是一个很重要的一环，可是我们的自然环境，它更是一个很长久、更存在这个世界上，它跟整个地球的对话的一个语言是更直接的。
You can find more on our new series, Formosa Forevermore, at TaiwanPlus.com. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today, we leave you with images from a shelter in southern France rescuing animals as the country experiences an intense summer heat wave. I'm Erika Liu. Take care and see you next time.